I'm like one of the earlier speakers. I hate going after all these dynamic people that you've had speaking on the stage. But one of the ways we try to save time in Congress is to say, I associate myself with my colleagues' remarks so that we don't have to repeat what they've said. I got here almost on time for when I was originally on the schedule, but unfortunately I had to go to a funeral. Our wonderful chairman of the Wilkes County Republican Party died unexpectedly this week, and so I had to stop in Wilkesboro for that. I didn't get to stay for the entire funeral, but so far the speakers I've heard have been fantastic, and I want to say I agree with all of them. They've done a fantastic job. I want to thank Matt Schlapp, Jim Womack, ACU, everybody who's involved with putting on this event today. It does not hurt us to be reminded of the principles you've been hearing about today. It never hurts. I'm just sorry we don't have more folks to hear those things, and we need to make sure that we get this word out to lots of other people, and we have a chance to do that in the election coming up. You all are the ones who are committed to the ideas and the cause of conservatism, and I'm always invigorated and reinvigorated by being with folks like you. I was asked to talk about the threat of socialism to our American tradition on campuses, the traditions of individual liberty, freedom of expression, and limited government. Nowhere is that threat more apparent than on most college campuses today. Now, we know we have a few outstanding places where there's not a problem, but for the vast majority of the campuses, it is a problem. In my role as the Republican leader of the House Committee on Education, I've witnessed firsthand how the pervasive liberal bias in higher education has fully metastasized over the past decade into an open embrace of full-blown socialism and its worst authoritarian impulses. Open inquiry and the pursuit of truth are no longer the hallmarks of American education. You know, I wanted to be a high school English teacher, but I was too poor to do student teaching. But I was able to get a master's in college teaching, and I taught at Appalachian for 15 years, a long time ago. And I will tell you, every semester, I taught sociology, and I was really a round peg in a square hole. My husband told me that the entire time I was there because of my being so conservative. But every semester I did an evaluation in my class. And the greatest thing my students would say to me in that evaluation was, "She taught me to think for the first time in a class. She taught me to think." There is no greater thing that a student can say about a teacher than that. That is not what is happening on college campuses these days. It is just the opposite. The college campus experience used to be an explosion of independent thought and free expression, but it is now characterized by the expectation of rigid conformity to extreme leftist ideologies. Any dissent is quickly stamped out by a rush to judgment, by mob rule. But you don't need me to tell you that. You've probably all heard the reports of anti-conservative, anti-Semitic, and anti-religious behavior that is now de rigueur in the fever swamps of academia. Many college campuses across the country have been swept up in anti-Semitic and anti-Israel nonsense about divesting from any kind of investment in Israel because it is supposedly an apartheid state. I'm not making this up. Students at Columbia voted to do this very thing just last week by a wide margin. And Columbia is only the most recent to jump on this bandwagon. Dozens of colleges and universities have pursued similar policies with the goal of harming and delegitimizing the only true democracy and our strongest ally in the Middle East. Plus, forces of socialism on campus are enforcing a new doctrine that attempts to stigmatize both conservative and the basic tenets of free market capitalism by making the completely outrageous claim that capitalism is fundamentally racist. Have you looked at the material that was put on the website of the African American Museum? Have any of you seen that? Go Google it if you haven't seen it. It is scary. That's right. They claim that the economic system that created historic levels of prosperity and innovation and that rescued people of all races from poverty while freeing billions to pursue their God-given dreams, this system of freedom and prosperity is supposed to be inherently racist. I wish we could just laugh this off as a handful of crazy professors protected by the power of tenure, but that's not the case, and hasn't been so for a long time. Ideas like this, the insane concept that capitalism is a racist system, these ideas are no longer far, far on the fringes of campus life. These ideas are now mainstreamed by campus cultures that worship political correctness, conformity to leftist propaganda, and diversity in everything. Everything except, of course, diverse political or religious viewpoints. We can't assume that the toxic ideas festering in many of our colleges will stay confined to the ivory tower any longer. Just take a look around you. Violence instead of debate, threats instead of tolerance, confiscation instead of capitalism. That's what our young people are being spoon-fed. Consider a recent report out of Vanderbilt. A class purporting to be on American elections instructed students that the Constitution, quote, was designed to perpetuate white supremacy, end quote. Apparently, the professors who are teaching this class haven't read the Constitution lately. But this sort of thing does help explain why so many colleges seem bent on erasing any kind of tribute to our founders from their campuses. Here's the truth. The only way to restore sanity and real education to our college campuses is to make a full-throated defense of free speech for all students and faculty. The era of leftist conformity and socialist propaganda on campus has made a mockery of free inquiry and free expression. Students and faculty of all political persuasions should be allowed and encouraged to give voice to the ideas that made our nation the freest and most prosperous in history. The preservation of our republic and protection of the ideas that inspired our founding and have sustained us for generations depend on the next generation of Americans. I want those students to say in a class, the professor taught me how to think. That's what I want them to be able to say. If we're to continue as a nation that cherishes freedom of speech, limited government, and individual liberty, we must have an educated population who will defend these ideas rather than tear them down. And that defense must be allowed, must be celebrated on our campuses. Thank you very much. Thank you for being here, and may God continue to bless you and our great country.